You're listening to the audio production of Heaven Help Us, How Faith Communities Inspire Hope, Strengthen Neighborhoods, and Build the Future, by John Kasich, published by Zondervan, and read by the author. To my wife Karen and my daughters Emma and Reese, you are my light and hope. The first act of love is always the giving of attention. Dallas Willard. Introduction. Faith is contagious. I published my first book nearly 25 years ago, a collection of inspirational profiles of individuals doing good works to bring about meaningful change. Courage is Contagious, Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things to Change the Face of America was an immediate New York Times bestseller. And one of the messages readers responded to, I think, was the way our subjects were so willing to put the needs of others ahead of their own, and the ways we were able to push each other to reflect on the essentialness of their extra efforts. My hope was that the book would motivate readers to think beyond their own circumstances and get them to share in my excitement and maybe even help them find inspiration in these stories of people doing amazing things. My focus was on people whom readers had likely never heard of, but who were moving mountains nevertheless. Perhaps the best example of the relatively anonymous people I celebrated in that book was a man named Albert Lexie, who at the time was living a quiet, unassuming life, working 2 days a week shining shoes at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. I first heard about Albert through my friend Stu Bamick, pastor of Pittsburgh's Orchard Hill Church, who reached out to me one day and told me I just had to meet this remarkable man, and so I did. And what I found was indeed remarkable. Albert was in the habit back then of donating his tips to the hospital's free care fund, which ensured that all patients received the medical care they need, regardless of their ability to pay. At the time of our first meeting, Albert was charging just $3 a shine, and yet he had somehow raised more than $40,000 in tips in just under 20 years. At the time of his death, nearly a dozen years later, that number had grown to more than $200,000, and Albert gained a bit of notoriety in and around town and even across the country after word of his generosity spread thanks to appearances on the Oprah Winfrey Show, the CBS Evening News, and other national programs, and after being honored at the 2010 Major League Baseball All-Star Game and being inducted by the Caring Institute into the Hall of Fame for Caring Americans. Albert and I kept in touch over the years, up until his death in 2018, and whenever we reconnected, we talked about his powerful example. I'm reminded of Albert's quiet heroism in these opening pages for the bridge it offers between the first book and this one right here. For Courage is Contagious, I was out to highlight ordinary people such as Albert, who were clearing a path in our society, doing extraordinary things to make our world a better place, in big ways and small. For this book, I'm hoping to grow that concept to include ordinary people doing extraordinary things with the help of their faith-based communities. Once again, in big ways and small. Because over the years, I've come to believe that the good works we do in service of our faith, alongside people who join us in service of that faith, can fundamentally change the world. Now, it just so happens that Albert Lexie was a man of faith, but he was raising that money on his own and donating it on his own with no expectation that he would be honored or recognized for his generosity in any way. He was just doing what he thought was right, in what ways he could, and yet his faith couldn't help but shine through. During one of our first visits, he dropped to his knees and started singing The Old Rugged Cross, a popular hymn from the early 1900s that became a church favorite after it appeared as the title song on Ernest Tubb's 1952 country gospel album. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. My goodness,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?